and welcome back to the MILELE readings. We are on chapter 19. Lots happened in chapter 18. First of all, Eden 2 was under attack from Keiko and a fleet of attack vessels. Inhabitants of Eden 2 are questioning whether the Council of Nations was behind it or whether it was just, Keiko in his vendetta to have them release hope to him. And so the islanders, of course, faced another lockdown, but they were joined by these pilots in silver planes who we found out are with Agios. So they came to the rescue to help the Eden 2 soldiers, and so they were able to hold their own and overcome the other forces. And during that time, we see some more of Agios's special abilities, as well as we had a brief introduction to a new character named Gabriel, who apparently is almost like a twin to Michael, to Agent Mike. We're also reminded of the Watcher's fixation on Hope, and also his discomfort at still having to be on the island. He refers to bright ones and the light there and so on and so forth. So we learned that the mist is weakening. So at some point the mist will dissipate. And we'll see what happens when it does. Okay, I think that's it for chapter 18. Let's move on to chapter 19. We're on Eden 2. So, essentially, he's staying put until Hope accomplishes our goal in the patch. That's right, sir, Colonel Davenport answered. Then he plans to take her with him. Governor Peters swore mildly under his breath. He turned his back to the conference room table full of military officers and department heads. When he faced them again, frustration had marred his features. He's delusional and obsessive. What I'd like to know is, where is the council in all this? Can no one else speak for them? He is the council, Captain Nick stated the obvious. Maybe I should just go with them. All eyes focused on Hope, some surprised, some alarmed. No, Hope, Governor Peters said firmly. We cannot give in that easily. But Agios told me I needed to make a choice, Hope stubbornly insisted, frustrated at being continually cornered by Keiko Bays, grieved for what everyone endured because of her. If it means lessening the burdens for Eden 2, then I'm willing. Her voice faltered, tears gathered. Plus, he has my brother. Ruth, who was seated beside her, placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. It had been a couple of hours since lockdown was lifted, but the knowledge that the Council of Nations forces still lurked on their waters was cause for great concern. Colonel Davenport cleared his throat. Ms. Caniza should feel no unnecessary compulsion to give in to those demands. He looked directly at her with fatherly concern, unexpected from him. Granted, the final journey into the mist patch will be an accomplishment for Eden 2, regardless of the envoy. But as for leaving the island, that's not his right to demand. How will they survive? Ruth asked. Their main ship has a portable dome, Agent Mike answered. Similar to the one here, not as large. Unlike the others, he'd stayed standing, arms crossed, leaning against the wall by the door. While everyone else seemed subdued and somber, energy still radiated from him. They have stored air supply, food, and water, he continued. Not to mention They could commission from our supplies, Colonel Davenport said. Funny, being commissioned by the enemy for our own supplies, Ruth said mirthlessly under her breath to Hope. Governor Peter returned to his seat. Does anyone know who the Silver Plain fighters were? I heard they came out of nowhere and disappeared just as quickly. Someone, please make sense of this for me. How can anyone make sense of anything Agios does? Captain Nick was grinning. Both his question and his grin lightened the mood for the first time since they'd all entered the room. Agios? Governor Peter said, frowning. He told me they were with him, Hope clarified. One of them stayed back to meet with him. She looked at Agent Mike. He could have been Agent Mike's twin. Agios called him Gabriel. Agent Mike's twin? Governor Peter looked puzzled. Everyone focused on Agent Mike. It didn't matter about his unkempt hair or dust-streaked uniform. There was an unexplained substance to him that mattered. It reminded Hope again how little they knew about him. Even the senior officers weren't sure of his true rank. He'd only declared himself Special Forces and had given no further details. But then Agios had approved him, and he'd proven himself to be enviable, skillful, and dependable. Now they also knew he wasn't intimidated by Tsabe, and though some wouldn't admit it, there was probably none among them who wasn't at the very least very uneasy around Keiko's bodyguard. Agent Mike was with Agios at the battle, Hope thought. Is he also from Jennies? This man, Gabriel, do you know him? Colonel Davenport asked Agent Mike. I do. Agent Mike's facial expression remained blank, but his eyes were alert, full of awareness, and, yes, full of mystery. He gave no further explanation. Leaning further across the table with his hands resting on top, Colonel Davenport stared intensely at him, waiting. Agent Mike stared back, unchanging. Colonel Davenport let out an uncomfortable, humorless chuckle, then growled, Well, are you going to fill us in or wait for another 20 questions? He's with Sovereign Ambassador. I'm with Sovereign Ambassador. That is all you need to know. Colonel Davenport rose, hands braced on the table. Look here, Shanxi, or whatever your name is. We are at war. I, for one, don't care about the mysteries right now. Spacemen in silver suits, whatever. He inhaled and exhaled loudly. His face was flushed. I just want to know, pardon my expression, what the hell is going on? People shifted uncomfortably. Agent Mike's presence on the island, after the initial screening and Agios' approval, had largely gone unchallenged. Colonel Davenport's tone was in direct opposition to that unspoken consensus. Agent Mike leaned off the wall, arms loose at his side. Sir, it really is all you need to know, he replied firmly, unchanging. Then his voice gentled. Trust, Sovereign Ambassador. With those words, a subtle change came over the room. Everyone, it seemed, could feel it. Surrender. Peace. Colonel Davenport, not one to usually yield in the midst of a dilemma, sat down heavily. He nodded, chuckled to himself, this time with humor. Fine, okay, let's do that then. New scene. Baby Moses was crawling rapidly across foldable gym mats on the floor of the Nutrition and Wellness Center. Just watching his chubby arms and legs propel him along was entertainment enough for the group of 5 adults who sat on the mats with their legs splayed, feet touching each other's to form a human barrier for the child. Hope mopped up another pool of drool left in the baby's trail, then dropped the damp cloth between her splayed legs. Baby Moses squealed when a lime green tennis ball rolled his way. He grabbed it and sat up unsteadily, dropping the ball. Justin gently rolled it back to him. Baby Moses picked it up with both hands. It immediately found its way to his mouth. More drool. His eyes were bright and his skin ruddy. Definitely a Gerber baby. Anna's bare foot pushed against Hope's. It would have been easier if we had a playpen for him. Boa laughed. Then we wouldn't have an excuse for sitting around doing nothing, watching this little guy do his thing. Ruth poked at Boa's right foot with her left. You mean only some of us wouldn't have an excuse. I'm his nurse, Hope's his foster mom, and Anna is part of his caregivers team. You and Justin are the real extras here. Justin threw his hands up. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure it wasn't that long ago that I was severely lectured for not taking it easy. It was as if his past illness was a distant memory. He was now a perfect picture of health. Even the spring in his curls testified. Hope laughed. She lay supine against the thick floor mat. I could actually sleep. She hasn't been sleeping well these last few nights, Ruth explained. She draped her right ankle over Hope's left, just as baby Moses attempted an escape. Hey, Momo, Boa called, distracting him. Come to Uncle Boa. Come on. I wouldn't sleep well either if I knew some crazy guy with a dictator mentality was waiting to abduct me, Anna said, emphasizing her words with a groan. She tucked a strand of blonde hair behind one ear. Just knowing they're out there on the ocean is distressing enough. She turned to look down at Hope. I don't know how you get through each day. It's been 3 already. Squinting up at her, Hope smiled faintly. Agios, she said simply. And all of you guys, I know you're all here for me. Anna's lips pursed, unconvinced. Still, I don't know how I'd handle the attentions of someone like that, and that creepy bodyguard, she shuddered. Something's been nagging at me for a while, Boa said, sounding ominous. I can't be the only one who's wondered this, but is that guy even human? Anna gasped. Silence. But he needs the suit, Justin broke the silence. How could he not be? Okay, Boa said. Maybe I need to rephrase that. His body is human-ish, but what is he really? A chill coursed through Hope. Boa had voiced her own misgivings. She attempted to sit up, but baby Moses was suddenly scrambling onto her abdomen. She reached up to assist his effort. Drool puddled into her neck. The chill left. Hello, my little prince, she cooed. Baby cackle and part tooth, part gum smile were her rewards. She pulled his pudgy warmth onto her chest. His pleasant baby smell, his weight comforted her. But even she was surprised by what came out of her mouth next. I need to go to the patch. I need to go through the barrier. She stroked the baby's soft, sandy brown hair that had recently thickened. What will be, she said. New scene. How much more tossing before she could fall asleep? Ruth sat up, flinging the bed covers aside, frustrated. Maybe all the earlier talk about sleeplessness had gotten to her. Despite the uneasiness on Eden 2 due to the Council of Nations forces and Keiko Bays, Ruth had slept fairly decently the last 2 nights. Perhaps it was worry over Lucas's final diagnosis that had recently been confirmed. Lucas's illness wasn't anything they could medically cure. She peered around the dim, silent bedroom. Nothing unusual. Yet everything felt unusual. Had she heard something? Was it from Hope's next-door bedroom? Despite Hope's brave words from the evening before, Ruth knew her friend faced tremendous pressure. The most sought after woman was now being forced to a day of reckoning by the most powerful man. The world envoy wanted the future bride of Prince Adani at his side. How could that be? Mendex Nabiun, Keiko Bays, and the power behind the Velchkis were totally at enmity with Agios, Prince Adani, and the sovereign emperor. Even though Keiko Bays claimed that the power of the Velchkis and the sovereign emperor were the same, how could that be believed? Impossible. The sovereign emperor was Prince Adani's father. And to Sabe, who was always by the envoy's side, who exactly was he? Sighing, she stood up. After pulling on a lightweight robe over her long shirt pajama, she donned flip-flops and made her way out to the hall. The stretch of hallway on her left was dim and empty. She turned to Hope's room on her right. The door was ajar. Ruth started toward the doorway, then froze as if some invisible force was holding her back. Her breathing constricted, but then a warm, gentle breeze wrapped around her. A man was slowly exiting the room. Agios? He looked at her briefly, smiled gently, then continued down the hallway. No, not Agios. I must be dreaming. This doesn't make sense, Ruth thought to herself. The man was carrying a woman cradled protectively against his chest. It was Hope. She was draped in a plain, long white gown that Ruth had never seen before. Ruth followed them, quietly, keeping with the man's unhurried pace. Suddenly, shouldn't she be alarmed at this stranger leaving with her friend? Yet, for some reason, she felt no opposition, and he didn't really seem like a stranger. Strange, she thought to herself. They traveled down the stairs at the same unhurried pace. At the bottom of the stairs, the exit door was already open. Had it been left open? Not usually. The man moved effortlessly through the doorway into the corridor, leading to the large front lobby. Security guards were at their post, yet no one seemed to notice the peculiar passage of the trio. Ruth felt light, as if propelled by the supernatural aura around the man. Two guards walked past them just before they reached the front entrance. The guards were talking quietly to each other, completely oblivious of the curfew breakers. It must be a dream, Ruth thought. Why else would security not notice us? The wide glass doors were not automatic, yet the first set opened independently, followed by a whoosh of air. The man went through with his burden. The outer doors opened in the same manner. Ruth continued to follow. She looked around nervously as the outer doors closed. Instead of the anticipated cooler night air, Ruth was still wrapped in warmth. They were outside the building, and still he continued. How far exactly was he traveling? How could he bear Hope's weight so effortlessly? Surreal, she thought. Warm air continued flowing around Ruth like some sort of melody without words or music. The loose ends of Hope's gown flowed around the man. Ruth looked for the familiar, the natural. The sky was starlit. The compound ground lights shone. Military guards patrolled. The real test would be the compound gates. But again, the gates opened. They passed through. The gates closed. Unnoticed. Unbelievable. The military guards stood at sentry duty, completely unaware of all that was taking place. As they passed the helipad, lights from the Council of Nations vessels flickered from the distant water. Was the world envoy the slightest bit aware that the object of his obsession was out of the protective confines of the compound. Yet, was Hope any safer in this man's arms? Certainly she was safe, since this man seemed to be the embodiment of Agios's essence. Ruth was uncertain how long they walked, but eventually she understood where they were going, to the mist patch. At the huge tent shelters outside the mist patch, the man paused. He turned to look at Ruth. In a calm, soothing, yet strong voice, he said, "Go back now. I will return her to you soon." Deep breath. New scene. She was dreaming, of course. In the dream, she was sleeping and being carried by someone. Even without opening her eyes in the dream, she knew they were traveling through the mist patch. Though it was usually cool there, she felt warm and safe. Instinctively, she knew she was being taken beyond where no one else could go, where she'd fainted last time. Beyond the barrier. But what lay beyond? Would she finally know in this dream? Suddenly, the person stopped walking. "Open your eyes," a voice said, a man's voice, strong and pleasant, like Agios's, yet not. Hope did, reluctantly. Indeed, they were in the patch, but she was seeing it like never before. At this time of night, the billowing mist usually appeared as thick blackness, much more ominous than its daytime smoke gray. However, a glow like soft candlelight surrounded them, permeating the darkness more effectively than fog lights. Looking up at the man's tender gaze and easy smile, Hope was filled with an inexplicable wonder and delight. "This is not a dream? No, I'm taking you to my home." She heard the rumble of cascading water and remembered the sound from the first time she'd reached the barrier. Then she saw it, a great stream of crystal clear water flowing down from somewhere unseen. The path before them ended at the bank of a mighty river that was being fed by the great stream of flowing water. Then it occurred to her, was this the source of the island's mysterious waterfall? "Once we cross the river," he said, "you will not remember everything you see, but you will remember who I am." Okay. Things are getting unusual, mysterious, and a little supernaturally. So that's where we end at chapter 19. And next time, please join me for chapter 20. Take care.